Right, so last night you saw me apply this this floor panel decal and seal it down with clear. This is all had overnight to dry, so it's the following evening now. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to apply a wash just to sort of bring out the detail and make it show up, particularly along these grey areas. I'm not so worried about the silver areas. I'll see how that looks. There are all kinds of options for applying washes. You've got Vallejo do acrylic washes. There's obviously stuff like the AK Interactive enamels and stuff. But I still, for over sort of 20 years now, I've been using oil paints, and I still find that I get the best and most controllable results with oil paints. So what I want to make is kind of a medium dirty sort of grey colour for this. Normally with a wash I would use these two mixed in various amounts. That's Payne's Grey, which is a very dark grey with a kind of slightly blue tint to it, and Raw Umber, which is just a dark brown. However, in this instance I want to lighten it up, so I will be adding some white. This is the Untitled white from MIG Productions. Any white will do, cadmium white or anything like that will be fine. So it's quite simply a case of squeezing a bit of each colour into a tray, like so. Okay, and using normal enamel white spirit thinner, although this is in a Tamiya jar, it's just in fact it's ordinary white spirit from sort of B&Q in the UK. As long as it has BS245 on the label, you know it's all to the same standard basically. To the British standard. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to add some of this thinner, and taking a brush I'm just going to sort of mash the wash down into it until you get kind of a thick dark browny grey kind of wash. Now, as I said, I want to lighten this, so just going to use a cocktail stick here to take a bit of the white out and then work that in, and you can probably see how that's immediately starting to lighten up my mix. Okay, so that's how it is, but I do want this to be quite a bit thinner than this, so I'm going to add a good bit more, thin it back maybe another 50%. So that's going to be a little bit darker, but not too much darker. What I'll do is just do a little test piece here. And in actual fact I really like that. I was thinking it might be a bit too light, but looking at that I quite like the effect. So I'm going to take a large brush, again a brush sort of that size, and I'm just going to brush the wash across this area here and allow it to settle into all the detail. And what it will do is it will pull in around detail and stuff like that, so just work it a little bit in like so. Make sure it goes into all the detail. And what you find is that as it dries, if you've got a slightly glossy, or at least not dead flat surface, your mix will pull into corners and stuff and give a lovely shaded effect, which is why you don't really want to be overdoing it. Now I'm just going to see how it looks on the silver areas. Yeah, that's okay. So the one thing to be careful of is obviously being a very thin mix and a very wet mix as well, because it's a thinner rather than a water based. It's got a very, very low surface tension, so it tends to obey the laws of gravity more or less to the letter. So it's a case of keeping that as upright as you can in the areas you want the actual mix to pull. So again, we're just going to keep mixing it around with the brush here, and then we're just going to work it again into the grey areas. Okay, and you hopefully can see on the film how the grey area that's been treated looks against the grey area that hasn't been treated. So now a lot of people say that the new the kind of new breed of enamels that people like AK Interactive and Ammo and people like that are releasing overcome the drying time issues with oil paints. All I can say to that is I've been using oil paints for this kind of wash for getting on quarter of a century now, ever since the first sort of Vallejo magazines and books in the early and mid 80s when I was just a teenager, and I've been using it more or less in my modelling ever since, and I've never had a problem with drying times. I probably won't touch this again till tomorrow evening or tomorrow afternoon when I've finished work for the week and have the afternoon to myself to do a bit of modelling. So I probably won't touch this again until then, and I've always found that that kind of time period is plenty of time for the oil paint to dry sufficiently for me to be able to carry on with detail painting and stuff. So I don't find the time issue is really a big issue. It doesn't really affect the way I model. So we're moving to the floor now. Now I'm thinking I might want that to be a little bit darker on the floor. So what I'm going to do is add a bit more of the Payne's Grey paint. Work it in and around, so that's darkened that down a bit more. And then it just allows us to work it particularly over our decal here, because it is very very shiny and bright, and we want to fade it back a little bit to give it a kind of weathered appearance. So you can just keep working this oil paint until you've got a look you're happy with. So the way that's gone into all the detail and stuff has really helped to lift the effect of that decal in seconds. So what will happen is that when that's dry, I'll work some of this and remove some excess from here with some kitchen towel, and then it'll all receive a coat of flat varnish to seal it all down, a flat acrylic varnish, Vallejo or similar, and then with that done I can start some of the detail painting. Not that there's going to be a great deal on this, because very little of this is going to be seen, but it allows us to create a little bit of an illusion, if you like. So you can see how careful this all is. So it's a case of just getting the paint on everything first, and then you can work it and manipulate it however you see fit. So what I'm going to do is put the lid on all my oil paint, and then using a piece of kitchen towel and the brush that I use to apply it, I'm just going to work the paint to remove any of the excess. Remember, the reason I picked a dark grey rather than a brown or anything is I don't want it to look like it's covered in mud, but I would like it to look a little bit sort of grimy and used. So that's why we tended more towards a grey colour than a brown, because what we want is to look sort of used and a little bit worn, but not filthy. So that's that done, and we'll just put that to one side. I'm just going to work the what I'm doing for the most part on the interior is working the paint vertically. Like so, and like I say, it sort of highlighted some of the detail on the metal area as well. So again, we're just going to use our piece of towel to clean off the majority, and it's worth noting that the oil paint does remain workable after the thinner has evaporated. The oil paint will remain workable for much longer than an enamel would. Ultimately, it's personal preference. I do use the enamels, I do have them, and I do use them selectively. But for this kind of approach, I just find that oil paints are a bit more foolproof and allow me to manipulate a bit better to achieve the results I want. So anyway, that's the interior. Given the oil wash now, so we're going to leave that for a few hours, and then we'll check and see if any, because once the thinner's evaporated, as I say, I can still manipulate the oils a little bit if I need to. Then when that's done, I'll give it a coat of flat acrylic varnish just to mat it all down, and then we might have a look at applying a little bit of pigment maybe to the actual deck itself to give an impression of a little bit of a dusty tracks and stuff where stuff's driven on and off, and then some more detail work to be done with paint. Right, so what we've done is the interior here has been flat coated. I'm ready to do some minor painting in here. I've washed and flat coated this, the liner of the interior as well, or the interior liner I should say. Now, looking at pictures of the C-17 interior, there's a row of fold-down seats along each interior wall, which appear to be made of a black vinyl of some description. So I wanted to sort of represent that in you know, not massively detailed, but give the illusion of those being there. So what I'm doing currently is I'm masking off to spray that area. So if I bring you in a little bit closer, Okay, bear with me while I zoom the camera. Okay, hopefully you can see that. So it's a case of masking the top and bottom, and then carefully laying out small strips of masking tape, which I've trimmed, which I've used a scalpel to cut to thickness. It's not a complicated job, it's quite time consuming. So it's just lining them up like so. Okay, and then pressing them down. Pressing them down and move on to the next one. You can also see when you look at the C-17 interior, there's each fold-down seat has got a V-shaped strap arrangement as well, which the kit sort of hints at. I'm not going to bother trying to represent those straps. They appear to be a dark olive green on some of the photos I've got, and they don't show up that brightly against the interior. So I'm happy that we're just going to hint at that. So hopefully you can see that all masked off. What I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom out a little bit again. Okay, so just need a bit of masking tape to cover each side. Make sure it's all pressed down like so. And then we're just going to use some general masking tape. To fill in the masking areas. To prevent any overspray if possible. Sorry, my little Heath Robinson camera mount appears to be moving of its own volition at the moment, so I do apologise for any lost imagery. Anyway, as you can see, I've done both of those now. I did the first one before I started filming just to speed this up a little bit. One thing I do, if you can see my my little cutting mat here, whenever I've done lots of masking, I end up with lots and lots of little pieces of masking tape all over the place, and it can get quite messy. So these days I quite frequently it might waste a little bit of masking tape, but I just scrape my cutting board clear of masking tape every now and then, like so. Okay, so what we're going to do is use a black for this colour. They're quite a glossy vinyl appearance, so I'm looking through I appreciate I'm out of shot at the moment, but let's have a look. So what I'm going to use for this one is the Ammo by MIG matte black. In fact, belay that. Very similar, I know, but this is the AK Interactive satin black, which is going to give a slightly glossier finish. Now you quite often find that when you get these paints these days, certainly the ammo stuff generally has a little shaker in it, so I'm just adding a little shaker to this older bottle of AK Interactive. Give it a quick shake, you can hear that. So let's just check my airbrush, just give it a quick spray through with a little bit of Vallejo airbrush cleaner. That isn't really to clean the airbrush, because I know it's clean. All it is that I use so many different kinds of paint with so many different types of thinner. It's just important that all the parts are kind of coated in a compatible thinner for the paint, so you don't get any problems. So I'm just adding a few drops of the satin black into my brush. Okay. Check for flow. I think my needle's retracted a little bit here, so let's just reseat my needle very carefully. That's better. And then we're just going to give it a light misted coat of satin black. Okay. And then we'll repeat the procedure with the second one. This is going on quite dry. What I don't want to do is flood any paint on and cause any build-up or paint to run under the masking. So light misted coats like so, and that's it. So let's just clean my airbrush out a second, enough for me to carry on without worrying about my airbrush clogging up. That'll do. Right, let's just remove this masking and see what we've got. So hopefully you can see that. It's not by any means perfect, but again, when it's all assembled and you're looking down there, it's just going to give the impression of that vinyl seating. And to be honest, I have to say that masking and spraying that is probably quicker and far more precise than trying to hand paint it. So you're trading the time you'd spend painting for masking, really. But I kind of hope you agree that in the final analysis that that is, if you like, a better result, and you know, that's taken me about half an hour in total. Anyway, so as far as I'm concerned, that's my interior basically done. All I want to do is I'm going to look for a blue. The seat cushions, the seats and seat cushions on the C-17 in the cockpit generally appear to be a blue colour, so what we'll do is I want to lighten that just a tad. So I'm looking for basically any kind of Vallejo paler. So I've got a bit of Model Air white there, which I'll just add a couple of drops of to lighten this up a little bit. Okay, let's mix it up and perhaps a little bit more. Now, like I said, I can't really stress enough that I'm going for an appearance rather than strict absolute scale accuracy, so I'm just looking for a reasonably small brush. That one will do. So we're just going to paint the seats here. So I find that Vallejo's paints, even the Model Air and stuff, they don't spray particularly well, certainly not enough for freehanding camouflages, I find. But for this kind of interior detail painting, I think they're the best. They're the best paints on the market. They perform pretty much how Humbrol enamels used to, back when I was young, shall we say. And before Humbrol went horribly wrong, sort of in the late 70s and early 80s, Humbrol was probably the best enamel paint in the world, and it's very nice to be able to say that these the Vallejo model colour paints perform just like Tamiya used to. Humbrol used to, but they're an acrylic. So I keep a good stock of them just for this kind of detail work. Now the cockpit windows on the C-17 are quite large, but against that is the fact that this is still a 144th scale kit, so whilst they're relatively speaking quite large, it's still going to be quite difficult to see anything through the windows. So that's the seats done. Let's have some. I've got some water here, and just for a final little hurrah, let's just paint the instrument panel and consoles with some Vallejo Vallejo flat black. So somebody's really going to have to look to see any of this on the finished model. So I don't think there's even a decal on the decal sheet. Yeah, there's not even an instruction, an instrument panel decal or anything on the decal sheet. So we can happily not worry about that, and I'm happy that that is. From my perspective, that is plenty good enough for what I want. So I'm just going to clean my brush out. This Vallejo airbrush cleaner is great stuff for all manner of brush and airbrush cleaning, and sometimes thinning and things like that. So it's what I use an awful lot when I'm painting with acrylics. Okay, so like I said, that's pretty much all we need. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to add the rams for the interior, for the ramp, and then paint them, and then we're more or less ready to get the interior together and move on with the assembly of the kit. So I'll see you when I've done that bit and we're ready to assemble, put the interior together with the liner. So I'll see you soon.